Today, I want to talk about a single word. That's it, just one word. A word that has become ingrained in the vernacular of corporate marketing teams, educational institutions, and the leaders of our nation. But a word that has become so incredibly misconstrued over the past year. And I know some of you may be thinking, really? A whole TED Talk about one word? This kid is dramatic. And for those of you thinking that, my response would be, perhaps, but I think this word is pretty important for all of us. So I want you to think back on the past year. I want you to think back to a time when you were knocked down, or felt lost, or felt like you just couldn't do it. What advice did you receive? What did your boss, teachers, or mentors say? You were probably told by someone that you needed to be strong, diligent, determined, steadfast, perseverant, and resilient. That last word, resilient, has been widespread, widely misused, and widely misinterpreted, and the effects of that can be extremely harmful. So today, I want to pick apart that word, and then go into a story to reassess and reframe what it truly means. Since the pandemic first hit the United States, we've been overwhelmed with pretty much everything. Yet despite the weight of public health statistics, the rippling effects of a politicized virus, the loss of loved ones, police brutality, increasing financial disparities, and the complete obliteration of our plans and goals, we have been told, time and time again, to just be resilient, to keep moving forward. This message, as we'll explore, is misguided and problematic, and yet it has permeated countless communications. Think about emails from university staff or employers, or the anthologies of LinkedIn posts by so-called professional development influencers, and other media you've been exposed to. One common thread among most, if not all of them, is the call to be resilient, unwaveringly perseverant. This proclaimed bond between resilience and tenacious, forward-focused progress implies that there is a contingent relationship between the two. That is, to be resilient, you must keep stride and continue to be productive. And it implies that to falter or to fail is characteristic of a lack of resilience. This implication can be seen all over the place, especially now. Here are just two examples of what I've seen. There was one university email that stated, "We can observe firsthand Rutgers' resilience as it manifests itself under the most trying circumstances. We push onward, working hard every day to better the state and the world. Rutgers remains a place of great hope, innovation, and perseverance." I also encountered a LinkedIn post listing the top 10 key drivers for success. The very first item read, "Grit and resilience, perseverance." Again and again, we are seeing resilience used as a blanket term for productivity and progress, ultimately suggesting that resilience and perseverance are just one and the same. Perhaps you've noticed this in the messages you've received, but even if not, every encounter with a post, email, or conversation that superglues resilience and perseverance together can strengthen your association of the two. What makes this more problematic is that resilience messaging, or as I call it, resilience propaganda, is on the rise. As an example, let's take a look at how many emails I've received that mention resilience. We'll look at the emails sent to me throughout my 5 completed semesters of college, comparing the number of resilience-related emails before and after March 10th, 2020, since that's when it was confirmed that Rutgers students would be sent home for remote instruction. In my first 3.5 semesters, I received a total of 34 emails mentioning resilience. That's just less than 10 resilience emails per semester. But in the last 1.5, I received a total of 72. That's an increase of nearly 112%. That's a lot. That's a frequency of 48 resilience emails per semester. And that's just my own inbox. These numbers can vary by student, and these numbers also don't account for alternative means of communication. Clearly, there's a lot of talk about being resilient right now, and the resilience being talked about has been confounded with perseverance and strength. But what's the big deal anyway? Well, I worry that this mass messaging, coupled with the apparent confusion, sends the wrong idea. I worry it suggests that we need to be more productive since we have all this extra time on our hands, that we need to be thriving during a pandemic. The more we tout perseverance under the guise of resilience, the more I worry that people feel pressure to keep on going, to fight for that online internship, to network online incessantly, and to continue on with our now digital lives as if nothing has changed. And I worry that people have come to believe that being resilient means coping by working relentlessly until we see better days. And that is incredibly harmful. It's damaging to the mental health of countless people when they're told and convinced that they need to be proactive and successful in a situation when the control is largely out of their hands. And I know this because I felt absolutely powerless under the weight of everything. My waking hours were somber. As a result of the pandemic and the constant messaging pressuring me to be resilient, I began to feel incapable. I could only travel from one Zoom room to the next, and it took a battle just to put on a smile. I felt like I was no longer able to make an impact on my own life, let alone the world around me. I was just bound to my laptop, watching helplessly as emails fluttered in, one by one bearing news of cancellations and loss, while the TV flashed tragedy after tragedy. Seeing the world and everything I had worked and hoped for fall apart, I was devastated. It was as if I was driving down the highway and the emergency brake was yanked up without warning. And as I lurched to a screeching stop, I watched all the roads and bridges before me collapse. And there I was, with nowhere to go, being told to keep driving forward. As my imposter syndrome set in, I faced nightmares of failed performances. I worried that everything I did counted for nothing, and I began to question why I was even trying at all. And these feelings of helplessness and inefficacy were only worsened every time I was hit with another tidal wave of resilience propaganda. As the spring semester ended and my anxiety and imposter syndrome reached all-time highs, I knew one thing for sure. I could not spend another second behind that stupid computer screen. I needed to get away from the digital world and step into a space where I could breathe more easily, some place where I felt calm and safe. I needed to escape these pressures to be perfect and successful during a pandemic and find a way to regain my sense of strength and efficacy, yes. And so, well, I guess you could say I came to the conclusion that any other young, rational adult experiencing a quarter-life crisis and severe emotional distress during a pandemic would come to. I decided, what better remedy than to sweat profusely under the summer sun and get my hands caked in dirt? And by that I mean, I reached out to Julianne Donini, the winemaker and co-founder of a South Jersey winery known as Auburn Road Vineyards, and I asked if I could help out in the fields. The subsequent shift in my life was sudden. Trading my laptop for a pair of pruners, I was now spending hours upon hours in the grapevines on a near daily basis, allowing me to escape the incessant stream of confusion, frustration, and hopelessness that had been drowning me for months. And in only a few days' time, I began to notice a difference within me. I felt more in control of my environment, and because there were tangible results to my work and I was supporting a local business, I felt like my actions counted for something again. And maybe the dehydration was just really messing with me, but I found myself feeling happier. I was reconnecting with nature and my community, and I was finally beginning to reconnect with myself. In the open air of the vineyard, I was able to reflect and find answers to what had troubled me for months. You may not suspect it, but there's actually a lot to be learned from working in a vineyard. Each task is its own quest, and each plant its own adventure. In particular, I learned a lot from working with a certain pesky plant known as Petit Verdot, a hybrid grape that makes for a wonderfully bold, floral, and fruity wine, but it is absolutely terrible and painstaking to work with. For reference, typical vineyard tasks include detangling the vines, positioning them so they grow straight, and ensuring that the grape clusters won't impede on each other's growth. Petit Verdot is especially difficult to work with because it has thin, windy, and brittle vines that are easily tangled and all too easily broken. And thus it's easy to become frustrated and to lose motivation as you wrestle with these vines, because no matter how gentle you try to be, they always manage to snap in your hands. The more I worked with this plant, however, the more I realized how important it was to stop, to pause and step back, and to look at the plant in its entirety. Only then can you identify all the areas that need to be addressed, and how, from the weeds at the base of the trunk, to the overlapping grape clusters, and to the tendrils that reach in every single direction. Only then, with this greater perspective, can you take care of the plant's needs and promote its future health. If you only focus on the wild, tangled-up canopy, you'll never see the roots of the issue, or how those roots propagate further problems. For a long time, I was only looking at the canopy. I saw nothing but long, spurious paths of opportunity that had withered away. A lot of what I had worked and hoped for was now this jumbled mess of a situation, and that was all I could see or focus on. But when I stepped back, away from our digital world and into the vineyard, I was able to see and appreciate the larger picture. And I was able to deeply reflect on life and the status of our country. I could see the roots where the weeds of COVID-19 had taken hold, to the tangled factors that muddled the situation, and to the unfruitful fruits of our present reality. Now clearly seeing how my life had changed as a result of the pandemic, I could address the situation and my emotional needs. I started by asking myself what I could do to feel whole again, what I wanted my role in this world to be, what I wanted to contribute to and be a part of. I asked myself what I truly wanted in my professional and personal lives, and how I wanted to strike a balance between the two. Like Petit Verdot, I had been tangled in a knot, and I needed to be gentle and intentional in releasing my bind. And by stepping back into the vineyard, I did just that. I could more clearly hear my thoughts. I had ample time and space to process my emotions. There was no pressure to keep trudging onwards when I was out there. And this action of stepping back was by no means a hindrance. I ultimately made 2-3 steps forward. I regained my sense of efficacy, and my drive to take on new challenges returned. I had a better sense of who I was and who I wanted to be. I started the fall semester feeling strengthened and invigorated. I improved my emotional, physical, and mental well-being. So now I ask all of you, was this not resilience? Sure, I didn't get an internship, and I definitely didn't take extra classes, and by no means did I create some crazy startup with a breathtaking IPO either, but I grew. I became stronger. I survived. I believe that all too often, just like those emails and LinkedIn posts, we mistake resilience for unwavering strength, for the conviction that we must quickly pick ourselves back up when we are knocked down, and that we must keep charging forward until we achieve our goals. And this misunderstanding isn't surprising. The confounding of resilience and perseverance, as discussed, is widespread in our individualistic and capitalistic society. And it's here that I would like to reframe our understanding of resilience. True resilience is employing emotionally intelligent skills, or in other words, listening to how we feel and responding appropriately with the care and attention we need. True resilience is practicing self-compassion and attending to our psychological needs. It's self-improvement and self-strengthening through adaptive coping methods. True resilience is not defined by brawn, nor is it defined by the accolades or achievements we gain during trying times. This true resilience that I'm talking about is known as psychological resilience, the ability to protect the emotional and mental self so that one can work through adversity. This is a concept that many of us are familiar with, but don't practice nearly as often as we should. I mean, I'm a psychology student, and this concept is not new to me, but it took the wrath of a pandemic for me to internalize what it truly means to be resilient. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge that I've been one of the more fortunate ones. I recognize that many of the losses experienced by others far outweigh my own. But regardless of the differences and the hardships we faced, I hope that you may still find some use in my message today. In the end, 2020 was a year of unimaginable losses for all of us, and we all responded differently for better or worse. So I want to leave you with this note. The ability to be psychologically resilient is both necessary and attainable for all of us. I encourage you all to find the people, the place, or the activity that helps you to relax, reflect, grow, and rejuvenate. Being outdoors and working in the vineyard was an important practice for me. But if picking grapes all day isn't exactly your cup of tea, perhaps you can find strength or comfort through art, music, reading, time spent with family, volunteering, therapy, or anything else that works for you. There isn't necessarily a universal solution for all of us, but there's likely something out there that can be your remedy. And to find that, and to figure out when you need it, I encourage you to look inwards. Ask yourself, right now even, what feels wrong? What are your unmet needs? And what will make you feel better? You may still feel the pressures to be tough or to keep on fighting. You may even feel guilty for being unproductive when taking time to focus on your emotions. But the more you practice emotional intelligence, the more you will learn to overcome that old definition of resilience. And once you embrace what it means to be psychologically resilient, you can fully provide your emotional self with the care, attention, and nourishment it needs. You will see that stepping back is not a setback, but the preparation before you take a giant leap forward. So please, be kind and forgiving to yourself. Remember that you're not some productivity robot, but a person, a social, emotional being. Your mental health is a key part of who you are, and if you're burnt out, you won't be able to get much further along. So don't be afraid to take a step back, away from the heat of the moment, because in many cases, it will allow you to go even further in life than you ever expected to. Thank you.